Prince Harry and Meghan Markle chimed in on the U.S. election and essentially encouraged people to vote for Joe Biden. I want to get your reaction to that.
I'm not a fan of hers. And I would say this, and she probably has heard that, but I wish a lot of luck to Harry, because he's going to need it.
Donald Trump, of course, elected president again in the USA. Probably not top of his agenda right now, but do you think that this could mean something for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex? I mean, will it implicate them in whether they stay in America?
Here's a real problem, yes, because suddenly America's become a much more hostile environment for Harry and Meghan now. Meghan is on record. She's criticised, she's said very unpleasant things about Donald Trump before she married Prince Harry, and there have been several statements from Mr. Trump and from members of his family that they're not big fans of Harry and Meghan either. So there's lots of questions, and I think it's a worrying time for Harry and Meghan.
And Charlotte, do you think he'll be keeping his head down a little bit as a result of the election?
He'll be definitely keeping his head down and burying it in the sand, and possibly even running away to Portugal, where he's got a new house, as you revealed. Because I just think that house in Portugal is going to come in very handy in coming months.
As Donald Trump becomes president again, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are facing a tough situation in the US. Trump has said some harsh things about Harry, and there's a big debate about Harry's visa, because he talked about using drugs in his book, Spare. Now, people are asking to see Harry's visa records, and there's even talk he could be deported. Will Harry and Meghan have to leave America? It's a tense time for them. Keep watching to see what happens next. Hey, quick favour before we continue. If you're enjoying this political content, please take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Most of you watch without subscribing, and it's completely free, but it helps us out a ton. Have you done it yet? Really appreciate the support. Harry is known for being a pretty friendly and easygoing guy, even though his wife, Meghan Markle, really doesn't like Donald Trump. A royal expert named Arthur Edwards thinks Harry would probably get along with Trump just fine if they ever met. Edwards said that if Harry had to work with Trump, like if Trump visited the royal family, Harry would do his job and be polite, and that would be no problem. Harry's the kind of person who can get along with most people, even if they're not his favourite. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Meghan Markle has made it clear that she's not a fan of Trump. She's even called him a misogynist on TV before, which means she thinks he doesn't treat women well. Because of this, some people think Meghan might be really upset about Trump becoming president again. There's even talk that she might not want to stay in America now that he's going to be in charge. So, while Harry seems like he'd be cool with Trump if they had to interact, Meghan feels very differently. It's kind of like when you and your sibling have totally different opinions about someone. Harry's like, it's fine, and Meghan's like, no way. Everyone's got their own feelings about it. So, what happens if Harry's visa records are made public? The stakes are higher than ever.
And staying with President Trump, the commander-in-chief is being urged to release Prince Harry's immigration files. The British royal's immigration status was an issue during the president's recent campaign, and he promised to take action against Prince Harry for failing to disclose his past drug use on the visa application. Now, applications for visas or green cards require candidates to honestly disclose their history of drug use, and a failure calls for strict action, including even expulsion. Now, as President Trump begins delivering on his promises of firing DEI hires and rounding up illegal migrants, is Prince Harry's deportation next on his list? Our next report has more.
Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, has been enjoying his time at a Montecito estate in California for the last 5 years. But it looks like his "I'm running away from home" phase is coming to an end. And it's not because of his wife Meghan Markle or the British royal family, because this time Prince Harry is facing a much bigger challenge: President Donald Trump.
Okay, so here's the deal with Prince Harry and Donald Trump. Even though Harry is usually a friendly and easygoing guy, it doesn't look like he's going to become best buddies with Trump anytime soon. Why? Well, a lot of it has to do with Meghan Markle. She really doesn't like Trump, and because of that, Harry probably doesn't either. A royal expert named Arthur Edwards told The Sun that it's pretty well known, Harry. And Meghan aren't fans of Trump, so even though Harry might normally get along with people, Meghan's feelings about Trump are likely keeping him from being friendly with the former president. Now, here's another thing. Trump isn't exactly Harry's biggest fan either. In fact, Trump has said some not-so-nice things about Harry in the past. He even complained that the Biden administration was being too nice to Harry, who now lives in the US. And it's not just Trump. Some of his supporters have been discussing trying to get Harry deported, which means kicked out of the country. As the controversy grows, one thing is clear. Harry's visa situation is far from simple.
We need to talk about Prince Harry. Now, Prince Harry's visa application is a long-running story. When he came to live in America, or when he went to live in America, when was it, 2020-ish, 4 or 5 years ago, he had to fill out his residency visa. Now, you often have to fill them out even when you're visiting. Now, one of the questions is, do you take drugs? Have you taken drugs? Have you ever taken drugs? Most people just say no, but Harry is in an interesting situation because he wrote in his book, Spare, about his love of cannabis, cocaine and magic mushrooms. So he's taken all of those. So his answer to the visa question should have been, yes, I have taken drugs. If it was, yes, I have taken drugs, why was he allowed to stay in America? Why was he allowed to live there? Because I wouldn't be allowed to, normal people wouldn't be allowed to. Was the land of the equal and the free guilty of kowtowing, forelock touching to a British aristocrat, because it shouldn't have been. And if he didn't put that down,
Why would they want to do that? Well, it all started when Harry released his book, Spare. In the book, he talked about using illegal drugs in the past. Now, here's the rule. If you admit to using illegal drugs, it's usually really hard to get a US visa. Some people wonder if Harry told the truth on his visa forms or got special treatment because he's a prince. A group called the Heritage Foundation has been trying to find out by going to court to get Harry's visa application made public. They really want to know if Harry followed the rules or not. But why is Harry's admission of drug use in Spare such a big deal for his US residency? Here's the breakdown.
And the long-running saga while old Joe was in charge, I suppose he still vaguely is, was that the Heritage Foundation, a think tank in Washington, wanted to see Harry's visa application to live in the States on the basis that in his book Spare, he wrote that he took drugs, that he enjoyed mushrooms, cannabis and cocaine. Now, if you admit to doing that on your visa application, yes, I'm a drug taker, basically, if it was me or any other ordinary British person, we would not be allowed, wouldn't even be allowed to visit, let alone live there. So, if he did admit that, why is he allowed to live in Britain? And if he didn't admit it, if he effectively lied on his visa application, that's a federal offence and he should be kicked out of America for that. Now, Donald Trump, not quite so well disposed towards Harry and Meghan, because he remains annoyed by the way they treated the Queen and has said so. He said, if I get into power, I want to look at that visa. I may have a look at Harry's residency here in America, and the stories are now out that his visa, at the very least.
Okay, so here's what's going on with Prince Harry's visa situation. Some people, like the Heritage Foundation, think the public should know more about how Harry got his US visa. They're especially curious because Harry talked about using illegal drugs in his book Spare, and usually that kind of thing can make it really hard to get a visa. Last year, a judge said no to making Harry's visa details public. But now, with a new government in Washington, things might change. The judge, named Carl Nichols, recently said he might be willing to share some of the details from Harry's visa application. He wants to be as open as possible, but he also doesn't want to invade Harry's privacy. So, it's kind of a tricky situation. This has been going on for 2 years, and it's still not totally clear what will happen. Now, here's where it gets a bit wild. Trump's team, especially someone named Kristi Noem, who's in charge of Homeland Security, has been making a lot of noise about immigration stuff. Noem has been showing up at immigration raids dressed in all kinds of outfits, like a bulletproof vest and even a border patrol uniform. People have started calling her Cosplay Kristi because she seems to love dressing up for attention. Some people even joke that she might show up at Harry's house in Montecito, California, dressed as George Washington and try to take him away. It sounds crazy, but with everything going on, who knows? A judge in Washington, D.C. said that he's thinking about making Harry's immigration file public. This file could show how Harry got his US visa, which lets him live in California with Meghan and their kids. But if the file is released, it might also put Harry at risk of being deported, which means being sent back to the UK. The whole thing started because a group called the Heritage Foundation sued the Department of Homeland Security. They want to know if Harry got special treatment when he applied for his visa, especially since he talked about using illegal drugs in his book Spare. Usually, admitting to drug use can make it really hard to get a visa, so people are curious if Harry followed the rules or not. Now, here's where Donald Trump comes in. Trump has talked about deporting Harry before, and now that he's back in the White House, some people think he might try to make that happen. Trump hasn't been very nice to Harry and Meghan in the past, so it's possible he could use this visa situation to cause trouble for them. The judge, Carl Nichols, said he wants to share as much information as possible with the public, but he also has to make sure he's not sharing anything too private. So, what will happen next is still up in the air. Basically, Harry and Meghan are probably keeping a close eye on this situation, especially since Trump isn't exactly their biggest fan. It's a bit of a mess, and we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. With Trump's promises to crack down on immigration, could Harry's past drug use put him at risk of deportation? Let's find out.
And staying with President Trump, the commander-in-chief is being urged to release Prince Harry's immigration files. The British royal's immigration status was an issue during the president's recent campaign, and he promised to take action against Prince Harry for failing to disclose his past drug use on the visa application. Now, applications for visas or green cards require candidates to honestly disclose their history of drug use, and if failure calls for strict action, including even expulsion. Now, as President Trump begins delivering on his promises of firing DEI hires and rounding up illegal migrants, is Prince Harry's deportation next on his list? Our next report has more.
A group called the Heritage Foundation filed a lawsuit because they wanted to know how Harry got his US visa, which allowed him to live in California with Meghan and their kids. The big question is whether Harry told the truth on his visa application, especially since he talked about using drugs like cocaine, marijuana, and psychedelic mushrooms in his book Spare. In the US, when you apply for a visa, they ask if you've ever used drugs. If you say yes, it can make it harder to get a visa, but if you lie about it, that can cause even bigger problems. The Heritage Foundation thinks the public should know if Harry was honest about his application or got special treatment because he's a prince. They're asking the government to release his visa records so everyone can see what happened. A judge named Carl Nichols is in charge of the case. He said he wants to share as much information as possible with the public, but he also has to make sure he's not sharing anything too private. He might remove some parts of the file to protect Harry's privacy, but the rest could be made public. If the records show Harry wasn't truthful, it could put him at risk of being deported, which means being sent back to the UK. Now, here's where things get even more complicated. Donald Trump, who's back in the White House, has talked about deporting Harry before. Trump isn't a big fan of Harry and Meghan, so some people think he might use this situation to cause trouble for them, but it's still not clear if that will actually happen. A royal expert named Jenny Bond said this is probably a stressful time for Harry and Meghan. She pointed out that it was awkward for them because Meghan had criticised Trump in the past, and now Trump has the power to decide whether Harry can stay in the US. But she also thinks Harry is determined to remain in California with his family, especially since their kids are in school there and they've started to put down roots. Could Harry and Meghan's life in the US be over? What do you think? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates.